It was something people didn't know, and that it had meaning, you know, to where we were 7 years ago. And you know, obviously it has more and more relevance to where we are today. You know, what can I say? It's just been kind of incredible what's happened in this country, and I think you know, it's just made the film that much more relevant. But also, I think it's made the film that much more accessible to people. You know, I think, you know, people who might have, you know, had a wall up against the film, you know, many of them see the film today, and you know, you can't deny some of the things.
Curious how active was the national branch. I read that Eldridge and Kathleen met here at FITS, correct?
Yeah, I do believe that's true.
Do you know if we had a particularly active chapter, or was the South different, obviously, from the West Coast and from New York City?
I think all the chapters were really different, and that was a part of, you know, the Panther Party, so that the, you know, the Oakland chapter is very different from the LA chapter, from Chicago, very different from Nashville. You know, I can't say that much about the Nashville chapter. You know, early on, we realized that we didn't want the film to be this kind of survey of the different chapters. And then, you know, we had to pick a couple of stories and a couple of chapters to kind of represent the totality of the Panthers, and you know, that's why some of the stories that we picked.
With that said, what storyline or character emerged that really captivated you or surprised you?
Well, I mean, I think Fred Hampton's story is just an incredible story, because, you know, Fred Hampton was very different, I think, and, you know, he was kind of the one. Unifying Chicago, and I think we showed it, you know, in the film, and I think there was something really special about Fred, but also, you know, he was so clearly and blatantly murdered by the police, and it made that story just even more poignant and sort of that we really wanted to tell. One of the things that happened for me, I don't know, I mean, I might have been 20 years old or so, and I'm from New York City, and I was walking down Broadway with a friend of mine, and they were playing this film called The Murder of Fred Hampton, which is a documentary that came out back in the day about Fred Hampton. And you know, I don't know what happened. It was just some, you know, maybe we were possessed. We were walking by this theater, and it was like maybe 9:30 at night, and they were playing it, and we went up to the box office, and we said, you know, we want to go see this film. And the guy said, well, it's already started. And we were like, well, that's okay, because we don't have any money. And it was like, really? Okay, just going in. You know, and we're willing to see this film about Fred Hampton. And it just really, I mean, I never knew that a documentary film could kind of, you know, be political. I never knew that a documentary film could kind of give you new information. I mean, and you know, anybody that's my age or near to my age will understand what I'm talking about. You know, we have a great deal of respect for documentaries now, but you know, when I was growing up, you know, documentaries were what we studied at school. You know, and they would say, oh, now we're going to see a film on the mating habits of the hummingbird. And they roll this projector into the room, and the teacher wouldn't know how to thread it up. They get it threaded up, and there'll be this guy droning on it, you know, with an English accent, the hummingbird. The biggest thing was that they turned on and off the lights, you know, so, you know, if you had a girlfriend, or if you were sleeping, you know. But, you know, that's all I knew about documentaries, and so, you know, this was, The Murder of Fred Hampton was something very, very different. Mike Gray, who actually was the director of that film, is in this film. He's the one who talks about the William O'Neill being a government informant. So we actually got to film Mike Gray, but also, you know, purchase some film from him that he used in that film. And Mike actually passed away a couple of weeks after he filmed it.
Speaking about the government, and as a journalist, I'm curious, how much of a freedom of information odyssey did it take to get all that FBI material?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the FBI, it took a while, but you know, some of the stuff was already out. There are people who've written books about the FBI's involvement with the Panthers. One of the Scott scholars is writing a Hoover, and they were able to direct us to stuff. But you know, we've done some other films where we had to work with the FBI, and you know, we just knew to start early. You know, you just kind of had to start early, and paperwork in order, you know, and you could get some of that stuff. I was really shocked, you know. I don't know if people here were, but how much, you know, the FBI J. Edgar Hoover actually documented what they did. I mean, those are actual FBI documents that we use in the film, you know, that it wasn't like some secret or history. I mean, you know, COINTELPRO was a secret program, so I guess maybe they felt that nobody would ever find out what they were doing, so they put it in writing, but, you know, all that stuff was, you know, in writing.
You know, your film obviously addresses it. The look was so important, as is the case with hip-hop, as is the case with so many things, and the media savvy as well. I mean, these folks seem to be way ahead of their time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also, you know, one of the things that happens when you make a documentary film that's really hard to do is give someone too much backstory, you know, like what happened before the Panthers, you know. And so, you know, we wanted to do a lot of that, and not all hit the cutting room floor. But, you know, I think the thing that what happened to for the Panthers too is they came at the end of the civil rights movement. So there were lessons that they could learn. I mean, part of the civil rights movement, you know, that never gets talked about, and, you know, part of any movement, you know, modern movement, is the movement to seize the media and get publicity. You know, and that's what it's all about. You know, that's what it's all about. So, you know, they were really good. They had learned the lessons from the you know, civil rights movement of Martin Luther King, but they were also, you know, just geniuses about the media, the look, the iconography, you know, that captivated so many people. Nobody had ever seen anything like this, you know, on national TV.
And then I look at the Emory Douglas artwork, and I'm reminded of the Shepard Fairey Barack Obama Hope image. I mean, again, another parallel that's just really remarkable. What would happen today if a group of armed black men walked into a secret legislature?
You know, I think that's a really interesting question and a scary question if you ask that, because I think, you know, one of the things that happened out of the Panthers policing the police in Oakland was there were no shootouts. You know, the shootout with Huey Newton was about something else. He was stopped dead at night by this cop who was a vicious police officer. But that was about something else. But, you know, there were no shootouts that took place because they were policing the police. And in one of the early screenings we had somebody, you know, stuff that you could never do that today. You know, and so you think, well, what does that mean? You know, what does that mean if we were better off in some ways in 1966? If you know, so, but also I think, you know, the other, obviously, there's parallels. I mean, it's just a surreal thing when you hear Ronald Reagan and those other people calling for gun control. You know, just,
sound familiar.
You go to Mars or something. You know, but you know, I mean, what would happen today? I mean, you know, look, they're passing open carry laws all over the country. You know, so you reap what you sow.
In Irving, Texas, we have men in camouflage in front of mosques.
Yeah,
It's sort of a defiant.
Yeah, well, you know, one of the first things we did when we finished the film was we took the film to Ferguson and did a screening with the community, free screening with the community.
And how fresh was Ferguson off of its turmoil?
It was pretty far away. I mean, so we screened in, I can't remember, April, so it was probably 6 months. But you know, they were still, you know, doing their thing in Ferguson, and you know, we had people from the community, and we brought up the Panthers there, and we talked at the screening. But one of the things that they just had this incident where men had come, I forgot the group they belonged to, Oath Keepers, who had broken up their march, you know, by walking through with guns, you know, because there's an open carry right there, you know.
Cleaver and Newton, was it inevitable that those two strong personalities would be damaging to cohesiveness? I mean, can you have two people like that in a group?
You know, I mean, I think, you know, when you say inevitable, who knows what's inevitable,
right.
You know. I mean, it happened, you know. If you ask me my own opinion, you know, probably you had two very volatile personalities. To say the least, somebody's laughing at that. my subtlety there. Well, you had, two very volatile personalities, and who knows? I mean, I think the other thing you have to understand about the Panthers is that because of things that were happening, they were never in the room together. They were always, we couldn't find a picture of Huey Newton and Eldridge Cleaver together. Not one. Okay, so they were never in the room together. Bobby Seale, Huey Newton, and Eldridge Cleaver. And so Eldridge flees, Huey gets out of jail. Eldridge doesn't know who Huey is, really. Huey doesn't know who Eldridge is. So because you don't know that, you have the FBI, on top of that, feeding disinformation. You don't know who to trust, what to believe. I don't know what this person might have said or might not have said, because I don't know this person. I don't know them personally. So I think there was also that, thrown into the mix.
I'm wondering how many of these folks might have suffered the generational infighting that we saw, like in Lee Daniels, the butler, when you had one generation in a family not agreeing with the new generation that might have been sympathizing with the Panthers. Were these people disowned by their parents?
I think in some, but I think, I think in some ways the general reaction of the community to the Panthers, at least, for a long time, was very favorable.
Like good for you.
It was very favorable, yeah. I mean, I think that, it still is. It still is. I mean, we brought Panthers, to the screenings, and they come out there standing ovation. And we had the first screening, in New York. We had a little party afterwards, and one guy said, "I never thought that I would get a standing ovation, from a mixed audience about the Black Panthers." But I think there was a general, an understanding of the Panthers, if not a total agreement. There's a definite, understanding. I may not agree with you, but I do understand why you do it what you do.
Yeah, and before we open it to the audience, I'd just like to finish with, what do you think is the biggest enduring misconception about the Panthers?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's just so many. I think that one of the things that I know we wanted to show in the film, subtly, was that the Panthers were not kind of isolated on this island by themselves. It's come down for us to believe, now that the Panthers were this group that was out there by themselves, and you see over and over again, there's that one shot in the beginning where Eldridge Cleaver is speaking to the crowd, and you see his back, and you see the crowd, and the crowd's 95% white. You see it over and over again. You see those signs, the signs in Chinese and Japanese and all those. And that the Panthers were part of this movement. They were in solidarity with a lot of other groups. They weren't out there, at least at first, on this kind of island by themselves. I think that's important to understand about the Panthers. And I think also the youth, is really important to understand how young the Panthers were. Generally, a couple of older, but how young they were. As Kathleen says, she was 20 when she joined, and she was one of the oldsters.
Yeah. How do you follow up? I know filmmakers always have several pots on the stove. What are you working on now, and how different is that from this project?
I'm working on a project, I'm working on a project on historic Black colleges and universities, which is a totally different project. It's covering a long period of history. But it's about, the making of African Americans' lives and who we are today, how that changed America. Okay, but wait, before I say, I should have said this in the beginning, the film will be on PBS all over the country on February 16th. Okay, so let people know I want to thank public television here, in Tennessee, but it's amazing how supportive PBS has been to this project. I keep thinking that one day they're going to watch it. And I would be so happy, but they've been incredibly supportive. And it's what they call, it's a big thing on PBS, is what's called common carriage, which means it'll be on everywhere on February 16th. So
Is it part of Independent Land?
it's part of Independent Land, and so one of that shows its mark for complicated.
I have a mic right here. Thank you, Demetria. Can we all thank Demetria for her excellent knowledge? Okay, first question right over here. We also have a mic over there with my colleague. And we're going to start right over here, Rachel. 1 second.
Good evening. Thank you, sir. The film was just wonderful. It's brilliant.
Can you hear me?
Thank you first for doing the film. I find it really interesting that some of the questions that were posed by Ms. Kalodimos is, she asked about dissension between Huey and Eldridge. And we tend to forget that we have, you know, you look at the generations and the civil rights movement and the struggles that we have as Black people right now, we have a common enemy. It's the same source that created the dissension between those two, that are creating the dissensions that we have now, that created the dissensions at the civil rights movement. And we all sit here as, you know, we romanticize the history of the Black Panthers. And history is oftentimes romanticized. What have we accomplished with this information? Where do we go? What change has actually occurred? It's kind of frustrating to sit and watch this, as, you know, wonderful a piece as it was. What have we accomplished? Where are we? Black people are still being killed in the streets, and we still have a common enemy. You know, what?
Okay. I think what's important is that the Panthers and their story be used for inspiration. You know, I think that's really important. I think that, you know, they're not a model. You know, we're in a very different time. But this is a group of people who started, you know, with nothing and started a movement, and were very committed to the movement and really believed that they could make change. You know, whether they made mistakes or not, you know, but I think that they did think that they could make change, and that's the first step. I think that's the first step for young people today.
Yes, to add to what Tate, thanks again for putting all this work together. And those folks want to know that it was a Black Panther party in Nashville with base at Fisk University. And then too, with your work around the historically Black colleges, I wonder, are you going to give Wilberforce a lot of attention, since it was one of the first HBCUs and it's on life support right now? Thank you.
Yeah, we actually start the story with Wilberforce. Yeah, I'm not sure.
As everyone else said before, thank you again for the film. It was a great experience. We had a bunch of students from the area here, you know, supported, so we really enjoyed it. But I wanted to ask you a question. So throughout the nation, there have been efforts very recently to re-examine some historical figures and some of the racist past. In particular, I think about Princeton University and some calling for them to remove Woodrow Wilson's name, the former president, from their School of Public Service because of some racist decisions he may or may not have made to desegregate the federal government. And I was wondering, in your opinion, do you think there will or should be some reevaluation of the legacy of J. Edgar Hoover?
I think the legacy of J. Edgar Hoover has already started. I think that's started and well underway. I do believe that the FBI office is still named the J. Edgar Hoover office in D.C. You know, and that's going to be a hard one, because the difference between, you know, anybody else and J. Edgar Hoover probably. I mean, J. Edgar Hoover, I did a film on Marcus Garvey, and J. Edgar Hoover is the agent that hounded Marcus Garvey out of the country in 1923. Okay? So J. Edgar Hoover had like a 50-year reign, you know, and it's going to be no joke to kind of reassess that. But yeah, it needs to be reassessed. Yeah.
Hey, thank you again for your film. My name is Vanguard of A Revolution. I'm a young political activist, and I actually have a two-part question. The first one is, if you can go back and ask Fred Hampton one question, what would it be? And the second one is, what are you doing currently for the Black Lives Matter movement?
Fred Hampton, I'm not sure if I can answer that. I haven't thought about that, and I don't want to answer that just right off the cuff. And I don't know. I'll tell you this though, if I could go back and meet anybody at Spring, I would love to spend some time with you. Because like Huey's a real enigma. You know, I mean, we've had people tell us, and this is the honest truth. I had somebody tell me that Huey Newton raped her, and then tell me, but Huey Newton was a genius and should be revered. And I'd like to meet someone who has that kind of effect on another human being. Black Lives Matter, we've done a ton of screenings all over the country with Black Lives Matter, with these other groups, or they're sitting here with me and they do Q&A, or they do. We brought them the Panthers and and Panther here, Black Lives Matter here. They talk, cross-talk about the movement back then, the movement today. I think we're doing that. The film is a little bit restricted now because it hasn't aired. Once the film airs in February, we'll do everything and anything we possibly can, to let people use the film, work with the film. We have a shorter version of the film. We have an hour version of the film that they've cut down. So I haven't seen it yet. I never want to see this version. But anyway, it helps to because you can have a 2-hour meeting or an hour and a half meeting and have time for Q&A rather than taking 2.5 hours. But we're doing everything we possibly can to get the film out there. If you've got an idea to see the actor, we'll be glad to do anything we can to help.
Well, again, I want to thank you for your film and your effort. And coming at you with another Fred Hampton / Black Lives Matter question. One of the things that really struck me about the film, I had heard this before, it's brought back my memory about how Fred is reaching out not just to black people, but to the young patriots, for poor white people, to the Latin lords and different things. When we see what's going on in this country, there are a lot of different movements that have come up. Some have come and gone. The Occupy Wall Street movement came and went. The Black Lives Matter movement's here. The Tea Party movement's here. And when you listen to a lot of these different movements, you hear some common threads. There's a lot of anger and corruption on Wall Street. There's anger at the NSA among all groups and so forth. And yet, it seems that there doesn't seem to be anybody that is able to pull all this together. I think about the Black Lives Matter movement. There's been a lot of people killed by police in recent years. It doesn't seem to be getting as much coverage. I guess I'm wondering what a Fred Hampton would do today, what could be done today to kind of bring people's attention that it's not just one group, but all of us are kind of being victimized and brutalized.
I think there's a lot being done by young people today, and I think again we work with a bunch of groups. I think there are a lot of people who are concerned. I think that one of the interesting things that's happened in the life of this film, so the film premiered in January at Sundance and big festivals and screenings, is that I felt, in talking to all over the country, that what we were in a horrible place, right? All these black people were being killed, and they're being killed, so visibly, but people were talking about it, and that was a good thing. People were talking about race and about this country and about where we are, and I think that's a really good thing. I think what's happened in the last couple of months is with the Republican circus that's going on. The conversation has gotten hijacked, into something else, and I think partially because I think I can speak for myself. This is really scary. What's going on. And all black people, we know we're next. But I think that just means we have to fight and push and struggle harder. That's all. Because it seems like when we stop struggling, like pushing this rock up the hill. When we stop pushing, we slide back down. And we just have to keep pushing and keep the pressure on. That's the only way, we're gonna get any change.
Once again, just like everybody who gets a chance to speak, appreciated, just like everybody who's in here. One thing that I would like to point out, when you were speaking on you just a second ago, one thing people don't do so much nowadays is do that back history like you've done, to where you can understand and appreciate somebody and also kind of watch their transformation, transitions in life, so that you can see where the beauty is, and how, just like she spoke in the movie, wrestling with demons kind of overrides that. Also to speak on how we're talking about what Frank Hampton was speaking on, which is the love for all people, because everybody goes through super struggles, especially in capitalistic culture. Everybody in each culture has a struggle. Now, my question would be, in the age that we're in now, with the things that are going on now, with this big push to data visualization, how would you suggest that we educate each other and the future on things that can actually be detrimental to us? Because one thing in the film that they spoke on was that the police, some of the police had good things to say, and then they just started talking about how they felt. They were more like being puppet mastered, in a sense, for lack of better words right now. More like being controlled by something a little bit different than what they had firsthand. How would you suggest that we educate each other so that knowledge overrides ignorance? That gets a lot of people in trouble. A lot of times it's their ignorance to a fact.
I'm not sure if I have any kind of great suggestion. I think that, one of the things, again, that I felt that's happening in the last, year and a half or whatever it's been since Ferguson kind of kicked things off, is that young people have started talking to each other and have stood up and talk about change and protest. And there was a time where, young people wouldn't do that. I did a film, like literally 2 years ago, we did a film called Freedom Summer. And when we made that film, people would stand up in the audience and go, "What's wrong with young people today? They just don't care. All they want to do is listen back to hip hop." We don't have that with this film and where we are now. People don't stand up and say that, ever. Because young people are involved, and that's the first step. I think that's really important. Is once again, change is made by young people. The Panthers were young. There's never been an old folks revolution. That's just not how it works. And I've been sitting here. I've traveled all over the country, with Panthers, and they say, to a man and a woman, it's your turn now. It's your world, it's your turn. I think that's what's important. And don't be afraid to talk about this stuff, among young people. Don't be afraid to talk about it, because, I've always said this about, when people say, young people this, and that, I say, no, young people know. They know. And you understand what I'm saying? We know. Just like, when Wayne Farr says, "I felt free." Okay? Every person in here knew what he meant. We know. Right? We just have to share it and talk about it and use that knowledge. We can't whatever, But we do it with love. That's the whole thing. That's what Jamal is talking about at the end of the film. You do it with love, or else why do it? If you don't do it with love, then you replace this with something else that's just bad.
First off, brother, thank you for allowing yourself to be mistaken as God for a few minutes.
Wait, leave me with my duties.
I will not take on that challenge. I will say that you're a great filmmaker and storyteller. And sometimes when you tell them about a subject, people expect you to be an expert on the whole world. Right. So I'll ask you a question about the world that you are an expert on. That's the story that you told. I was a little young for the Panthers, but I had the distinction and blessing to play Denzel Dowell in the Mario Van Peebles film, which is all we've had up to this point. That was, at least a part of the narrative. But I wanted to ask a question about Elaine Brown post-film, because there have been some expressions of regret, requests to edit, God knows what must be in the editing bin on the proverbial floor, what was left out of the film. But as a storyteller, what has been your challenge with maybe not being able to capture everybody's stories, and what has been her regret about the film, and how have you reconciled that?
You know, about Elaine Brown, you know, everybody has a right to their opinion. You know, when we made the film, you know, we knew that this was not a film that was going to please everybody. You know, and that there's, you know, if everybody in the audience closes their eyes and imagines what the film about the Panthers would look like that pleases everybody, then, you know, it would be starring Barney, the purple dinosaur, whatever it is. You know, so there's no, you know, and so we knew that everybody wasn't going to be pleased. We probably seen the film for 400 or 500 Panthers at this point. Have seen the film. There's 3 or 4, you know, have, you know, vocal objections. I'll take those odds. You know, I'll take those odds. So that's kind of where we are there. What was the other part of the question? So, you know, we did our best. So I think one of the things that happened for us in this long 7-year filmmaking process, you know, is we spent a couple of years kind of dancing around the Panthers, you know, and wanting everybody to be happy and wanting, you know, and then finally it was like, okay, you know, the cameras are going to roll, you know, on December 12th. You know, we're going to start filming. If you want to be in it, you can be in it. If you don't want to be in it, you know, that's fine. But we're going to start filming. We're going to make this film, and it's up to you to participate or not. You know, and that's what we had to tell the story, you know, the best that we possibly could, and we got, you know, 95% of people we wanted to get.
I just wanted to say thank you for the film. Are you considering, I watched all your documentaries, have you considered converting any of them to massive open online courses so people can really delve into them deeper and maybe get college credit and, you know, even expand upon what you're already doing?
Yeah, we're trying to make the film as available as we possibly can. It's a long, complicated story. You know, frankly, what happens, what has happened with some of the films is we bought rights for the films for 10 years. You know, so we bought rights to the footage. It's in the film for 10 years. Those 10 years have now lapsed. So we're working with a foundation to try to, you know, get some money to repurchase the rights so that those films, so that we can, you know, make them all available to people and that they can see it. So, yeah. So platforms, you know, for you know, how films reach people change very quickly. We're doing everything we can. We're doing everything we can to get the rights back so that we can show the films and have the films, you know, available to everybody.
And kind of bridging into the massive open online courses. My understanding your next project deals with historically Black colleges.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a lot of work I've done at Knoxville College. I have a lot of pictures. It's one of the oldest historical Black colleges in the country. It's shuttered. It's over in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I'd be happy to share this with some of you.
We can send something. Great.
We have about 5 minutes left. Mr. Nelson flew in. He's going to fly out early in the morning, and we appreciate that. We're just going to take a couple more questions. Someone over here had a hand. 1 second.
Hi. I was wondering if the bodyguard informant ever any time expressed remorse or tried to justify himself, or if he has faced any repercussions throughout his life for his, he was like the worst person in the film.
Well, I don't know, J. Edgar Hoover. So here's one of the other bodyguards. That interview was done almost 30 years ago for Eyes on the Prize. And we got it from them. The day that episode with him was to air, he ran out on the highway, got hit by a truck, and killed. It's always been thought that it was suicide.
Yeah.
Suicide. I don't know if that makes you feel any better.
Well, and I was being semi-facetious.
Well, so yeah. I mean, I think that you have to understand that a lot of government performance. very strange people, you know, because they feel like they're like FBI agents and they're not. And they feel like they're Black Panthers and they're not. And so a lot of times there's a lot of kind of mental things that go on.
Hi, thank you so much for the documentary. And I graduated from one of the historical Black colleges, American Baptist Theological Seminary, so I hope you do some filming there. It's a very interesting story, how that came to be. One of the questions I had was, I was thinking that Angela Davis was one of the Black Panthers. I may be incorrect. Was she, maybe I missed it, was she not featured in the film?
Yeah, you missed that part. You went to the bathroom. No, Angela Davis is not. Angela Davis was not a member of the Black Panther Party. She was not a member of the Black Panther Party. She was aligned with the Black Panther Party, as she says. Many of her beliefs were the same as the party's, but she was not a member of the Black Panther Party. And so, in making a film that could have been 17 hours long, when we found a way that we didn't have to talk about Angela at length, we didn't. There's a great film that came out a couple years ago called Free Angela and All Political Prisoners. That is Angela Davis' story. I'm sure you can get it very quickly. Free Angela and All Political Prisoners. You got a mic? Go.
I had a question about, I know you mentioned this being the first full feature-length film on the Black Panthers, and I know today in Black Lives Matter we have a lot of conversations about preserving our history, documenting things as they happen so that in the future people can know our story. And I wonder, like, in the length of time that it took you to gather all this and doing your interviews, were there any sentiments expressed by Black Panthers or regrets that they didn't document a lot of their stories and their histories throughout the movement?
No, I mean, I'm not sure if it's because we never really asked them that question that way, but I also think that you have to understand that this was a very different time. You know, people weren't carrying around cameras in their pocket. Everybody, so you're talking about an era that was pre-videotape, and so if you wanted to film something, you had to have 16mm film, a 16mm camera. You had to then develop it. It basically cost about $200 for 10 minutes by the time you got film shot and developed it. So nobody pretty much had kind of their own personal film. So I think that so there was kind of people don't talk about, I wish we could have filmed more. Because at that point, filming was something that was only done by real professionals with this very expensive equipment. And that's changed now. And I think we see the change in Black Lives Matter. We see the change in people filming police and what's happened over the last year or so.
As a high school sophomore, I stood in the line to see Fred Hampton's apartment after he was shot up and served and volunteered to serve representing the Chicago feeding program. And what I would say, I have just a statement. My statement is for the young people asking what to do, look at the film, the answers are there. The answers are there on what to do and how to lead you to the next step, because the Panthers really were about change. And it lives in your film, so I really appreciate you taking me back to when I was young.
Thank you so much.
Also, brother, thank you for the spirit up in me, because I'm a baby of that 60s movement where I was a part of what's called the February 1st movement. It was February 1st, 1960, the sit-ins in Greensboro, and there was a bunch of activist students like Black Lives Matter who met at Fisk University, and we organized a brigade to go to Cuba in '74, where we met with revolutionaries who were involved in the liberation struggle. So again, connect with the activists all over. This thing is worldwide. Also, Fisk University's special collections. You're talking about history, the second best library on Black history, next to the authors. What is it, Spingarn or Schoenberg? Okay, help me out. Again, the second best library is at Fisk, Special Collections, top floor. What makes Fisk so unique is they produce W.E. Du Bois, who was one of the fathers of the Pan-Africanist movement. Pan-Africanist movement, again, talk about connecting, linking up with liberation struggles worldwide. That brother was one of Fisk University's babies. And last, the point about where do we find this information online, go to eblackstudies.org, eblackstudies.org.
Once again, I want to thank you very much for the documentary. I was going to ask you, in the documentary film, there was a push for gun control. And it was odd that because the Black Panthers, they wanted gun control. But now they do not want gun control. So what do you think about that?
I tried, look, the guns have gotten totally out of hand. It's insanely, one of the things that can help gun control maybe is for, black people to start marching around with guns. They'll reassess the whole thing. I don't want to say that, but, maybe that's a way to get some gun control. What's that?
And if they join the NRA.
Yeah.
This will be our final question for the evening. No pressure.
Like everybody else, I just have to say thank you for the film. It's very great, just for you to lay out the Panther story in a way that is not biased, as it's often laid out by just whatever source you may look at the Panther story on. But one thing that really stood out to me was during that transformation, as Bobby Seale and Elaine Brown said, we're going to get engaged in the political process. We're going to actually put into practice what the civil rights movement was all about. And I can only imagine how the dynamics would have changed if that actually would have been successful in them being elected, and how that could have been a blueprint for whatever could have happened. And so I'm curious, because if I get this right, you're a historian by training, right?
No.
No.
I'm a filmmaker. I'm not a historian.
Not really. Well, you're really a historian because you're doing all this. But really, in your studies and creating these films, what lessons have you pulled from history that are very salient for you that you think may be able that we can learn from and really implement as future physicians and scientists and activists, being really, I think the next step is for us to really engage into the political process and be very critical of it. So what lessons do you like to share with us about how we can really make a change in society that's beneficial for all people?
I think the one thing I've seen is that it's all about struggle and pushing and work. That for some reason, it seems that one of the things that we want to do, as African Americans and as a country, is think that we're like on this, ascendancy, up this mountain and everything's, going great and reach the mountaintop. But that's not how it is. It seems like it's this roller coaster ride. That's what history is. There's times where it's up and it's down, it's up and it's down. And we just got to keep pushing and struggling, because if we don't, we go backwards. I think again, everybody, I guess, what's happening, I know for me and people I'm with, my family, we're all looking at the news and going, what is going on in this country? And it's very, very scary and very, very strange, and we have to keep pushing and keep fighting. And that's what's, I think, really important, because I want to hope that the majority of people in this country, aren't there where certain, what we're hearing on the news another 20, 30, you might have 50, 60, 70 more years. 70 more years, and so it's up to you to make the changes you want to see and you want this country to be. That's it. I think, once again, February 16th, the film will be on PBS. Everybody can see it then. If you go, our website is theblackpanthers.com. That's the website for the film, theblackpanthers.com. You can, see where the film is going to be, the trailer. Also,